Welcome to Zoo Nation, where we cover politics and current events, and we watch history as it unfolds. My name is Josh.
I'm Nathan.
And we're here to bring you a couple of stories, actually a few. There's been a lot going on in recent times, and I think the best way to begin is we got an event coming up pretty soon. It'll be December the 6th. We're planning for this channel, Zoo Nation, to go live, and we're going to try and have some guests on as well, working on that still. And we're going to be covering the Georgia runoff. So it's going to be Raphael Warnock versus Herschel Walker, and we're going to be covering it in real time. And want to get your chats, want to hear your thoughts about that, and we want to bring you the results as we can. And we'll be looking at a mixture of places, things like we'll even look at what Trump affectionately calls the fake news, but we'll also be looking at the Associated Press. We'll be watching some Fox, and we'll be going through a number of different online sources as well, just to see who's calling what as it happens. And it's a big deal. I mean, this run in Georgia, to me, could truly go either way. It's a toss-up. I really don't know how it's going to go. This was a seat that did pretty well in 2020, but obviously it came down to Purdue versus Raphael Warnock, and Warnock ended up walking away with it. And now it's Warnock again versus Herschel Walker. And the thing is, even though the race was in a sense called, but it was called as we got to do a runoff, Warnock was ahead from what I've seen. And we'll see. People can change their minds. Things may play out differently in the next one, but we'll just have to see what happens between Warnock and Walker. So I got to tell you, before we even go to the first story having to do with Russia and Ukraine, it's a crazy time to be alive. I think you agree with that. I was thinking about it just before recording. We didn't even mention this in the prep, that to me it feels like you can truly turn on the news and anything could be on. Yeah. It could be anything.
Oh, yeah.
The Trump presidency was entertaining enough, and it felt like he was going to say anything at any moment in time, but with the way that the left is in this country and how far left they are, any story that can happen at any given moment in time is just shocking and surprising. And they've moved so far to the left, and unfortunately, when it comes to solutions, that's the big thing too. The big thing that I think we need to expect from all of our politicians is our solutions. Okay, what are you going to do about it? Most of us can see the problem, but what are you going to do about it? So, having to do with Ukraine versus Russia, the story now, and the story as it came out for the first time, had to do with essentially there was a missile strike, and it looked like at first that it came from Russia, that killed, the number that I saw was 2 Polish citizens. Now, I've got some sources pulled up when it comes to that. From what I can tell, there's been some corrections. That actually it's possible that there was a Russian attack. Ukraine responded to this Russian attack. They launched missiles, meaning Ukraine, and one of those hit a couple of people in Poland. And so the whole thing is, one thing that we think about here in the West, especially in the United States of America, we've got one of the most well-funded militaries in the world. One thing that I just thought of is that other militaries are not sitting that well. I mean, there's times malfunctions happen. And so when I see stuff like this, my first impulse is not to think, oh, something malicious happened. Like, oh, Ukraine meant to do this as a way to flex on Poland. I just don't see why they would do that. I mean, Ukraine is what I'm saying. Because Ukraine has no motive to do that. They want to buddy up to the countries around them. They want to trying to get into NATO. There's no reason that they would try and hurt another country and say, but you should let us into NATO. They want to be peaceful. They want to be fighting a war against Russia, obviously, because they're trying to defend themselves. But anyway, pulling up the source is there's just really a lot going on when it comes to this. Like, for example, one thing that I found as well, this is a little bit of a different thing, but still about Russia. This is from the Patriot Brief, but powerhousenews.com is the actual source. Actually, this reporter thinks that Putin is actually the title of it is Putin set for collapse amid war as Ukraine advances against Russia on all fronts. And basically the point made here is that Putin's actually in trouble, that a lot of people in Russia are mad at Putin that the war is taking as long as it is, and that a lot of the world is looking at Russia like, what's your problem? Why are you doing this? Because here's the thing, at some level, everything on this planet is an optics game. You know, you don't want to look bad. And if you say, oh, this is going to be easy, we're going to go in here and we're going to denazify Ukraine, which is what they say, by the way.
COVID.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what
optics game.
Flatten the curve type stuff. I mean, it doesn't look good on Putin's side of things as far as, support for him. But, I mean, in a country like Russia, I don't think support really matters, though. You know what I mean? I don't know, because that's more of a dictatorship there anyway.
At some point, though, in any tyranny or dictatorship, they can only rule, even as weird as it sounds, they can only rule by the consent of the government.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
People have got to say to themselves, we will obey you in order for that person to have power.
100%.
And I mean, the other thing that gets confusing to me is, from what I've heard from like, there's one guy I listen to that's actually he's actually Ukrainian, like he's ethnically Russian, but he came from the Ukraine, and he says actually that a lot of Russians really like Putin.
Yeah.
The question is, how many of them do and how many of them don't? And even if he's overall, the other thing is, even if the polls say that, are the polls fake or real? It's so easy in this day and time to fake things. So it's just like, what's actually going on?
You got to be careful what you find on the internet, et cetera.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Although I did see that George Washington said we can trust everything we see on the internet. So that checks out.
At a time that the internet wasn't alone, though.
Yes.
It wasn't a thing, yeah.
This is from, again, powerhousenews.com. Russia's bloodthirsty tyrant Vladimir Putin is going to lose power and possibly even his life before his criminal war to conquer Ukraine ends. There are active talks in Moscow as to who would replace him, according to Ukrainian intelligence chief. But the problem becomes, and look, I'm not impugning Ukraine by saying this, you want to win a psychological war against your opponent, so it could be Ukraine is saying this to freak Putin out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, look, here's the thing. That's one thing that that Russia, like there's a former, I think his name was Yuri Bezmenov or something like that. He defected to the West, and he's the guy that you see in the Call of Duty game saying you've got 4 stages to basically take down the West. And one of them is demoralization, or there's destabilization, but there's also demoralization, where you get them to essentially be afraid of themselves. You're demoralizing them. You're trying to attack their morale, essentially. Right. And this is a pretty good way to do it, to make Putin paranoid, like, oh, someone's going to replace me. In fact, funny thing, that's worked in the past. Like, Stalin was so paranoid that someone was going to try to kill him that he treated his doctors so badly that he ended up dying. Stalin was actually sick with some basic disease. I don't even know what it was. People actually speculate it was some kind of a sexually transmitted disease. A treatment would have been very simple, but none of the doctors wanted to be the one that failed to cure Stalin.
Right.
So they basically just left him in his room suffering until he died. And that's the kind of paranoia that's been present in dictatorships before. So if Ukraine is trying to get the pot stirred, so to speak, it's actually a pretty excellent move. Now, it could be true. I'm not saying it's not. There could be people in Russia that are saying we want to depose Putin. In fact, again, I don't know the stats well enough as far as popularity goes to speak to that one way or the other.
Of course.
The other thing, I did not realize this at the time, is that the death count apparently for the war in Ukraine is up to 70,000 Russians have been killed. It seems likely, goes the article, that Putin could be targeted and brought down by even more extremist circles inside the Russian government because he is losing the war in Ukraine. This means his downfall would not come from pro-peace, pro-democracy, and pro-freedom factions. So essentially, there's no good news.
Right.
Either we got Putin or we got someone worse than Putin.
More extreme,
Unless somehow a pro-democracy group in Russia can take the wheel.
Unlikely.
Unlikely. Is that possible? Theoretically, but who knows?
Right.
Who knows?
Plausible, but
again, there's a possibility, but what's the likelihood of that happening? To me, the thing about civil wars, the analogy I use is it's a plane you can't really land.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how's it going to end out? I mean, the thing is, people talk about civil unrest even in this country, but throughout all of history, whenever there's a civil war, there's no way of knowing, is it going to be the king or is it going to be his people that win? Because there's people that are on the king's side, people that are on the people's side throughout any war throughout the time. When I say king, it applies to regimes, it applies to military dictatorships, so on and so forth. So, to our actual story, we're going to begin with the good stuff, which is by CNN. Thank you, by the way, for firing Humpty Dumpty. So this is from Phil Mattingly. Poland, NATO say, missile that killed 2 likely, fired by Ukraine, defending against Russian attack. So that was not the story at first. At first, it was a Russian missile, at least that's what people thought. But now it's coming out that it looks like it was a Ukrainian missile that actually went wild and killed people. Again, I don't know why there would be any reason for Ukraine to fire it on purpose. There's no incentive unless the people in Poland are being called Polish, but they're actually Russian operatives.
Right.
It's impossible to tell. It's impossible to tell.
I mean, technically, Ukraine, this is just a theory. It's not, this is not backed by anything. But, if you want NATO to join the fight, as Ukraine, because Ukraine has wanted to join NATO before, they've been denied this far for things. But if you wanted NATO to join the fight, you send a missile over there, you start this narrative of it was started by, it was fired by Russia, and, instantly, due to the NATO alliance and the way that's supposed to go, if one country is attacked, it's considered an attack on all. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Completely plausible. Completely plausible.
It's plausible. I'm not saying that, that happened. I don't have sources to back any of that up, but I mean, that could be a thing. This is one of those wars that we really don't. I mean, we don't support Russia, of course, as far as Putin's no good guy. But Zelensky's not a good guy either. Ukraine has had some interesting stuff going on in the past.
Particularly in 2014.
Right. Exactly. So it's just weird how some of this plays out. So it wouldn't shock me if later down the line we found out that that missile was fired by Ukraine in an attempt to get NATO involved in the war, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and again, is that I don't know. Neither Ukraine's not a good Russia. I'm not trying to sound like a Putin supporter here, but neither these are two bad guys going at each other right now. Putin's not good, and then you've got Zelensky, who's got his own issues. If you do some research into him and stuff, he's had going on, and then Ukraine in general, they've got a lot of history, like you said, particularly in 2014. So it's really a matter of just keeping NATO out of this, because I want to stay out of this war as much as possible.
Understood. I'm with you. So this is I'm going to skim through this article. The leaders of Poland and NATO said the missile that killed 2 people in Polish territory on Tuesday was likely fired by Ukrainian forces defending their country against a barrage of Russian strikes, and that the incident appeared to be an accident. The blast occurred outside the rural eastern Polish village of, I'm not going to get this right, I'm going to say Pezadowo, about 4 miles west.
I'm not even going to try that.
West from the Ukrainian border on Tuesday afternoon, roughly the same time as Russia launched its biggest wave. We got an ad popping up. Its biggest wave of missile attacks on Ukrainian cities. That may have been part of the problem. Is one side, they both kind of launched attacks at each other simultaneously, and so a missile hits Polish people, and they're like, well, Russia just launched some missile strikes. Maybe Russia did it. There may be some confusion there. Again, what you said is completely plausible, that Ukraine was like, well, how can we take advantage of this? Since they're launching missiles, can we try and make it look like an attack on one is an attack on all? That could
also
be the
just to cover up our own mistake as well.
Right.
Too,
well, that again, then there's also that where they're trying to be pragmatic and say, well, this is a mistake, but how can we act like no, we didn't make a mistake? So anyway, on Wednesday, the Polish president, again, not going to pronounce the first name, but Duda is essentially the last name, told a press conference that there was a high chance it was an air defense missile from the Ukrainian side and likely had fallen in Poland in an accident while intercepting incoming Russian missiles. And we don't need to go any deeper into that one. So I mean, to me, I tend to agree with what you said. This is just a war where it's like, if you see 2 dudes that you go to school with and neither one of them is a good guy, why would you protect one against the other? Right. It's just like they're both mean bullies, or one's a bully and the other one is just a real jerk to everyone else around him. It's like, why would you step in and say, well, hey, big bully, I'll come to your defense? You wouldn't do that. And as a result, to me, why would we get involved with this? The other thing that's stupid about this is, what was funny, I had a family member nearby, was watching Fox earlier this week, and someone was on the news, some person that just seemed like a talking head that didn't have a whole lot of basis for this, said, the far left doesn't like this war and the far right doesn't like this war, or basically that they want us to go on, join on one side or the other. And I got to tell you, I've never heard anyone on the left criticize Ukraine. I can't think of it. And the problem is, again, not to get too deep into this, but the Democrat Party, frankly, back to the 2014 coup, has ties to this. Obama and Biden, and look, who's president now? That'd be Biden.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, why does this happen? And secondly, I even think about how the Ukrainian prime minister treated Trump with the whole weird phone call thing, and it happened to be him on the phone with the Ukrainian prime minister that caused Trump to be impeached, where it seemed like, okay, this was either a trap or it felt targeted or it felt coordinated. So there's just so many complicated factors here where it's like, why would we go to war for the breadbasket of the Democrat Party? Now, what gets complicated in any war is how much of that is the regime in charge, and should the people that are under their heel be hurt for that?
Right.
But at the same time, again, what I said earlier, if they're tired of that government being bad and corrupt and helping the Democrat Party of the United States, they've got to tell them we're no longer going to stand for this.
Yeah, and that's not, America or NATO's job to fix everything.
Sure.
I mean, we can help to an extent sometimes, but we don't have to go in and fix everything, nor should we. It's not. That was Trump's whole thing. As far as 2016 and 2020 in general, it's like America first, and that's what America first means. It's like, hey, let's fix our stuff. We can help other people, but at the same time, we want to focus mainly on us. And some people see that as selfish and stuff, but I mean, how can you help others if you don't have a strong base within your own country? So yeah, but it's. Yeah, like you said, I like your analogy with the whole two bully thing. Yeah, there's no way I'm stepping in there unless I'm hit. Unless somehow I'm brought up, then I guess I'll side with one of the guys if I'm actually punched. But
right, and to me, what's funny is the pro-NATO people and the Democrats feel hit. They feel like, kind of to use your analogy, if you're hit, you want to get involved.
Yeah.
The Democrats feel like they've been hit because they're like, well, this is one of our people. And so do the pro-NATOists that are like, well, even though they're not in NATO, they feel in a way more European-centric. They have more loyalty to like the world or globalism or Europe than they do to America. And that's part of the breakdown of values, is one side tends to value the globe and one's more about an individual nation and country. And look, we should care about human life no matter what, but again, it comes down to you can only take care of really what's within your own four walls, and after that, you do your best. And one way to do your best is to look after your country, because you have more of a direct effect on your country than you do on the world as a whole.
Exactly.
And I also like what James Madison says, which is that the United States should not be a knight looking for monsters to slay.
No, 100%.
And I agree with that. And
100%.
so... lest you think it's just what CNN is saying, the Washington Post, and again, I read this from these sources, lest someone say, well, you're saying it's Ukraine's fault and that's disinformation. It's like, look, the Washington Post and CNN are saying this, so it's not like we're reading just from Fox News or something like that. Ukraine says missile parts that landed in Poland may have been Ukrainian, so this is a little bit less conclusive, but they're at least admitting that it could be. So many missiles were fired by Russia and Ukraine during the Russian attack on Ukrainian infrastructure Tuesday that the missile fragments that struck Poland could have been of either Russian or Ukrainian origin. Ukraine Air Force spokesman Yuri Ignat said. So basically, I mean, we can kind of leave it there. And actually, one last thing before I move on. Fox News basically has another one saying, the Associated Press has issued a correction after reporting Russian missiles killed 2 people in Poland. The Associated Press said that it relied on information from a senior American intelligence official who spoke on condition of anonymity, so therefore it's not as conclusive as I necessarily thought. So regarding that, unless you have other thoughts about the war in Ukraine, to me, I'll say quickly, this war, it's when you look at, again, to keep using the same analogy, at 2 people that are fighting, and you've got 2 people hitting each other, one's bigger, but the other one's just as ferocious.
Yeah.
There's no way of calling the fight. It's like, okay, this guy will win. To me, it's just like Russia was saying the whole time, we're big, we're strong, we're going to get in there and just kick your tail.
Yeah.
They're having a much harder time. Now, to be fair, Ukraine has gotten a lot of aid, so that's a factor, I think.
Yeah.
But it could go on to the next month, to the next year. There's surely no way. I mean, the thing is, at any point, Russia could say, you know what, we did what we set out to do. We've conquered enough territory. We're going to stop right here.
I don't think they'll do that.
There's that on the one hand. They may say, and the argument that Putin, I think, would make is we've conquered the mostly Russian-speaking, the Russian ethnicity people in Ukraine. so we've got it. Or they may say, you know what, no, we're going to keep going, and so we basically have all of the Ukraine. Right. And again, it depends on what Putin, I think the only thing that will affect that is what Putin thinks he can sell to his people. If he thinks, no, they're not, my people are not going to be satisfied with stopping here, we need to go here, he's going to keep the war going. On the other hand, if the people in Russia are tired of the war lasting so long and he thinks they'll be happy to stop the war, that could happen. But then it comes down to, but will Ukraine say, okay, and we're not going to try to push you out of our country? Yeah. Or are they going to say, well, if you're going to stop fighting, we're going to try to push you out of our country? Yeah. It depends on how that goes. And there was one article I saw, though I don't have it at the moment, basically saying that there was some level of interest that Putin was actually interested in hearing some peace talks. Now, whether that's true or what this peace talks will result in has yet to be determined. Right. And I got to tell you, I have zero faith that our president is going to be any sort of a mediator between them. He may try to be a mediator, but he's not going to be an effective mediator. I'll put it that way. You're right. Just not a good one.
Right, exactly. I mean, and I don't know. I think I don't see Putin as a guy that's also here for a peace talk. We've heard these quote unquote peace talks a couple of times, and nothing's happened. You know, I don't even know if they've actually gone on, and if they haven't I know for a fact they haven't gone anywhere, but we've heard, you know, rumors of peace talks and stuff like that. I know, and as we can see, they've gone nowhere. You know, but no, I just don't think that Putin's going to settle for, like, well, you know, like you said, I mean, it's possible, but I just don't see it happening. Well, we've conquered enough, or we've gotten back the mostly Russian. I think Putin's in for it all.
The whole Ukraine.
Oh yeah, it's Ukraine or nothing. You know, and I think that's what he's there for. And also, I think come winter, you know, it feels like we're there, but we're not yet. especially in, you know, Russia and Ukraine. Come winter, I think that's kind of what Putin's kind of waiting for. I think he's trying to freeze most of the people out. Now losing places, I mean, they Ukraine gained some ground back. That's not helping his plan any. But, you know, if he can keep them pushed back, there's a solid chance that winter could mess Ukraine up and their progression. So I don't know. I just don't see the peace talks going anywhere, and I don't see Putin being a guy to just say, you know, yeah, we conquered enough and that's it. I see this going on for quite some time, possibly. I mean, I don't know.
What are the chances again, this is disaster area, of the nuclear thing being on the table, of nukes actually happening?
Well, I mean, we've heard rumors of that since this war started. You know, so
what's the likelihood of it happening?
With Russia? I mean, who knows? I mean, I honestly do not know. You know, I'm no war expert. I don't, you know, but I mean, if Ukraine gains a lot of ground back, you know, Putin could get frustrated and just say forget it and, you know, push a button and something like that. But I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't get to that, because if that does happen, we've entered World War III for sure. You know, and who knows what happens there. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think on the whole nuclear thing?
It's just impossible to know. I don't know. There's so many people that seem completely convinced that Putin is like the second coming of Adolf Hitler. Like, there's this stupid cartoon of like a little boy that's it's a painting made to look like Putin and full-grown Hitler, like kind of caressing his cheek. Mm-hmm. And to me, when I receive stuff like that, I'm like, okay, people may not like Putin, but I think that's really too far. Like, I just don't see him being like the next big dictator. I see him as a...
We haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
That's the thing. Mm. Even if he is, I still think there's another step for him to be that level of evil. Mm. Because right now, it's two sides shooting each other. It's not like I'm going to ethnically cleanse my country. You know, there's nothing like that.
He's definitely evil. I mean, 100%. You know, Putin's definitely an evil guy, but we haven't, and you know, we've seen him put his own people in jail and stuff like that, people against him, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. But you know, it hasn't. Also, he's not on the path. Thus, at least he claims thus far. You know, but that's what a lot of people claim. He's not on the path of global domination. Hitler was also on the path of global domination as well, and also like you said, the ethnically cleansing as well. So
and you would think if he was interested in doing that, he would be kind of doing what Hitler did, which is to tell his people in Russia, "You're the best. We deserve to rule the world, and we're going to rule the world." And he's not doing that.
Yeah.
So for that reason, again, I think there's at least enough differences now to say I just don't see it. And a lot of people, unfortunately, especially, again, this is mainly on the left, think that he is, and therefore we need to do something about it. And I just don't buy it.
I think it's just Putin's trying to expand back to the old Soviet Union, Soviet Union lines.
It wasn't. The thing is, it's that, from what I understand, and I would need to corroborate this with more history about the area, is that this country has belonged to Russia before it was even the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is the lines have changed.
Yeah, the lines have changed so much.
So much that at times Ukraine was its own area, and at times it belonged to other countries, and at times it did belong to Russia. And then it gets complicated where you've got an ethnic populace in there that do identify as Russian. But then the question is like, so what do? I mean, does that mean that Russia's justified in invading? No. But it's like, but what do these people do? Should they leave their country? They've lived in that. They've lived in Ukraine. It'd be like me telling you, well, if you identify as South Carolinian, then the new South Carolina we determined is over here. So you need to leave your neighborhood that you've lived in
exactly. It's
forever.
Like, are you going to pay for it?
Right. That's the thing. It's like, no, I want to stay where I'm at. And so, again, it's just a more nuanced topic than a lot of people think. And unfortunately, in a day and time where hardly anyone in the media can be believed, what do you believe? What do you think? And you don't want to go running to the arms of the Russians, but you also don't want to go running to the arms, again, of the people that are controlled by Ukraine and the deep state and the New World Order and all that kind of thing. So the people that are enemies of our country. So moving on to the next topic, because we need to, having to do, real quick, we've got a big story. And again, I'm trying to go through a plethora of different sources. This is also for CNN. Democrat concedes to Republican Representative Lauren Boebert in tight Colorado House race. So we talked about Boebert briefly in the last episode, having to do with, well, what's going to happen. At the time, it was neck and neck. She was barely ahead, but she was neck and neck. And so Adam Frisch was his name. He announced this past Friday that he had called the Republican Representative Lauren Boebert and had conceded the race for Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. He said the likelihood of this recount, because there's going to be a recount, changing more than a handful of votes is very small. It'd be disingenuous and unethical for us or any other group to continue to raise false hope and encourage fundraising for a recount. Colorado elections, he says, are safe, accurate, and secure. Please save your money for your groceries or rent your children for other important causes and organizations. I just got off the phone with Representative Boebert. I called her to formally concede. So she's in, and she'll be in for another 2 years. So,
do you trust that line where the Democrat says that the elections are safe?
I don't know what I feel about that. My thing is, I say with tongue firmly placed in cheek, the person I wanted to win won. So.
Exactly. Right, exactly.
That's
Some
how it
of
is.
them might be.
That's how it is at this point. It's like, if it goes the way we like for it to go, then it's good. And if it doesn't go the way we like for it to go, then it's... What's funny is, unfortunately, one thing that Biden said that was actually halfway accurate was in that speech, the Dark Brendan speech, was we are in a dangerous path if a side thinks either they won or they were cheated. And unfortunately, on both sides,
that's the thing.
We're getting there. Like, the Democrats are like, if they win, Russia hacked the election. And unfortunately, again, in a lot of ways, legitimately so, the conservatives are like, well, if you win, why are machines not working? Why are you running out of paper on election day? There's legitimate questions to ask. There's also a documentary, I'm avoiding the term, 2 Millennia Donkeys, made by a polite Indian gentleman, an intelligent Indian gentleman, about 2 Millennia Donkey family. I'm not going to get into the exact title. That credibly points to some questions, some irregularities. And so when it comes to this, I mean, again, when Biden said that, it's like, well, broken clock right twice a day. It's like, you're not necessarily wrong. The problem is you have no plan to fix that faith. You're to help that faith get better.
And part of the problem there too is one was no proof, and then the other one was actual no, or had some legitimacy and
Sure.
proof to it.
Sure.
That should have at least been looked into. And then the other one was looked into with no proof, and so it's like
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
and guess
that's the problem.
And guess which one the Democrats jumped on?
Yeah,
the one
exactly.
without proof,
Right.
and then proceeded to investigate and basically, in a lot of ways, tie Trump's hands behind his back because
Right.
they were doing all these probes.
Exactly.
Getting all involved, and then some idiot decided, let's make a TV show about that. By the way,
Yeah.
about Comey. It's called the Comey Rule, which is just I haven't seen it yet. I want to, but it has what's his name, the Jeff Daniels guy. Yeah, he's in it, and it's like they were making it before Trump hadn't even finished his first term. It's just
Right.
ridiculous, and I mean, if you find that entertaining, I guess good on you.
Yeah.
But it's just like, again. They jumped on the one for which there was no proof, and
Right.
even some sensible people on the left are like, "Look, I just don't think Trump is a Russian
Yeah.
puppet." There's people on the left that admit that. No,
Yeah.
there's several. There's actually more
Oh, yeah.
that don't, even after the Mueller report came
Right.
out. But still,
And that's the problem is, I think if we have genuine concern for our elections, on both sides, even, of course you have a side that you want to win, I've got a side that I want to win, et cetera, but, if you genuinely care about our elections and just our country in general, you should look into things, especially if there's proof, I don't necessarily have a problem with them looking into, now as to the extent that they did, even after they knew that there was no proof, that was a problem. But, at first it's like, okay, fine, do it if you think that's what happened, with the whole Russia stuff and everything. It's like, fine, go ahead.
6 months, 1 year.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. But then once you find nothing, it's like, okay, like, what's up? But then you've got, the 2020 election and everything, and it's like, hey, we're seeing all this stuff. Like, we're legitimately seeing stuff, statistics, just how polls, all of a sudden votes came in, just everything. We're actually seeing this stuff, and no one bats an eye at it. So that's kind of the problem. It's like, my thing is, even if you don't have proof, at least a little bit of an investigation for, a year, maybe, and if you don't come up with anything, then yeah, stop it, cold, like, hey, there's nothing, fine.
Right.
But if you come up with something within that year, it's like, hey, we got to continue
Well,
this.
and Ted Cruz only asked for like 2 weeks. He said,
Right.
you know what? Let's put off the inauguration 2
Yeah.
weeks. Let's investigate. Let's see what happened.
Yeah.
Let's get a committee going. Let's get some people in the agencies looking into
Right.
the 2020 election. Would not do it. Would not do it. Would not do it.
Right.
And again, to me, 2 weeks is hardly a lofty request. I mean, I don't even know if he wanted to back up inauguration day. He was saying, look, we got time to take 2 weeks even before inauguration day. Yeah,
exactly.
by this point, this is like December.
Yeah, there were processes they could have gone through.
Yeah, and there was just complete refusal. By the way, also on Trump appointees, like Bill Barr refused to do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that just refused when they buckled and were afraid of looking too political.
Right.
And it's like, look, you already look political. You need to do your job. And you need to look into this because a lot of people have legitimate problems, and including thousands, at least maybe not thousands, but hundreds of affidavits saying that there was problems going on.
Right, and there's just people concerned. People are genuinely concerned about their country. If you're genuinely concerned about your country, left or right, you should, voting is a big thing that you should be worried about and making sure that, like, hey, are they safe?
Yeah.
I mean, we've known for ages that, like, stuff has gone on, but to the extent that we've seen certain things, in 2020 with the Russia stuff that never came up, it's like, this stuff does at least need to be looked into a little bit, and sadly one of them was not, and the other one was, and I don't know, on the Democratic side, you should at least kind of look like you care to an extent, but you don't. That's the problem. It's like you claim you want fair and safe elections, but you're not looking like you care when you're not at least giving the other side at least a little bit of chance. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So go to the next story having to do with the Arizona governor race. Democrat Katie Hobbs defeats MAGA favorite Kari Lake in high-stakes race for governor in Arizona. So that's the next one that came out that was not out by the time we recorded last time, was that Katie Hobbs actually beat Kari Lake in Arizona's race for governor. NBC News projected Monday, and this is written on November the 14th, so it's a little bit old, but again, this just wasn't out last time we talked.
Yeah.
That race was still neck and neck, and with with Hobbs with a very slight advantage, but it was very, very little. It was only by like 1,000 votes or so.
What amazes me about this one and why I think this, particularly Arizona, is weird with their election. This woman sat in the basement. She pulled the Joe Biden method. Sat in the basement the entire election. You know, what does she stand on? You know, I don't know. It's like for the longest time we really didn't know what Biden stood on for the most part. You know, except for the 2 debates. You know, I mean. And those were
he was in more debates than that, but he was.
Well, yeah, with I'm talking with Trump, you know.
Oh,
yeah. After that, I mean, he didn't do a lot of rallies.
No.
You know, this woman pulled the same stunt, and it's like, how is that a winning technique? That doesn't sound right. So that's the first like little red flag for me, kind of with this one. You know, and also, I don't know. You know, you got Maricopa County. That there's some weird stuff in Maricopa County.
Yeah, I read you an article last time we went when we came on here, and I've looked through it even more since then. I talked about it actually in a podcast episode recently, and it's not just Fox 10, it's AZ Central, it's Rutgers. I mean, there's just been multiple sources that are talking about the irregularities. About I've seen as high. I think one place I saw was 30% of the machines in Maricopa County were not working. And by 3 in the afternoon, so there are altogether 60 polling places that were not working.
Right.
60. They had almost a third, 17 by 3 in the afternoon. It's like, are y'all even trying to fix this problem? 3 in the afternoon, you've got 4 hours left. You've not even got a third done.
That's interesting too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, at least me, I go to vote after work. That's funny how things stop working after work. I don't know the statistics of when most Republicans go to vote, you know, but I do know that, you know, most Republicans do go to vote on the day of, you know, and Democrats tend to vote early, you know, so there's that. But I wonder, you know, time-wise, do most Republicans go to vote, you know, after work, you know, so like 3, that's a perfect time for things, you know, again, and I'm not saying that's how it is, but that kind of interesting.
It is
on the time.
It is. The problems began before 3 p.m. I'm just saying by 3 p.m. they only had less than a third fixed. And again, it just makes me wonder how many of these irregularities are almost like by design. It just seems to be, and again, I'm not saying, you and I were discussing this in the prep, that neither one of us is saying, oh, well, things are illegitimate because of, you know, things being irregular.
Yeah.
The point we're making is maybe in certain areas there's a case to be made.
Yeah.
So this part of Arizona, there's a case to be made. The other one that I think of, several places in Pennsylvania also ran out of paper.
Yeah.
And it's like, and again, here, what resulted? Fetterman won. And it's like, so this is election day, and you're expecting high turnouts, I would think. This is 2022. Right. You know, we had a high turnout in 2020. It's midterms of Biden's presidency, and you run out of paper. Why did you not have enough paper in a race where it's a guy that's had a stroke versus a guy endorsed by Trump? And I'm not saying that guy should have been endorsed by Trump. I don't think so.
No, 100%.
And I actually said that in the prep as well.
Right.
I think this is a bone I have. That's a major bone I pick with Trump, is he needs to endorse better. Yeah. But anyway, that aside, then you get this guy that is an out and out stroke victim. Like, the thing about Biden is it's not really, it's like, there's no declaration like, okay,
he's got dementia.
Well, there's no, a doctor has not come forward and said that.
Right.
Fetterman, it was out and out. No, he's had a stroke.
Yep.
Everyone knows this. There was hospital records. And so, and he won against this other guy that was, again, mentally competent. But again, here's the other thing is, it comes down to people that you mentioned, Democrats into early vote. The other thing is the factor, like, apparently after the debate that they had, Fetterman and Oz, the number one Google search after that debate was, how do I change my vote in Pennsylvania? Spoiler alert, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you can't.
Fun fact.
And it's like, that's the problem. If they had been, you know, more intelligent, not been complete boneheads, they could have waited for the debate, then cast their vote. Even if they early voted, they could have cast their vote after. Now it's too late. And that's the thing. If they had waited, who knows how that election would have gone? It could have been Oz, or it could have been at least close. I mean, who knows what it would have been? I mean, they learned that Fetterman won, I want to say, either the night of the election or the next day.
Yeah.
It was very close to the day of. But again, so that may have been, so to speak, legitimate, but they still took advantage of early voting, and that's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous that you have, in some cases, it's voting month. In other cases, it's longer than a whole month. You can start voting in September, even though voting day.
And you hardly know in September what these guys stand on.
There's been no debates. There's been no debates or anything like that. And it's just like, so in one way or the other, there's been foul play, whether you take that as, the electoral process itself or just people taking advantage of early voting and mail-in ballots. Do with that as you will. Yeah. So that's the way I see it. And so when it comes to the midterms, that's where we're at. There's other articles out regarding Kari Lake. Apparently, Kari Lake is at least considering some legal option. Unfortunately, I'm not that optimistic. Trump tried the legal option in 2020. Didn't really get him anywhere. Look, I wish her all the best. She really should do something and hopefully get...
No, she should.
Because here's the thing. Trump challenged it. One thing that he did was it resulted in a Maricopa County audit, and the Democrats tried to bury that and act like there was nothing in there. I'm reading a book that has the results of that audit in there. It's hugely damning. People that voted twice, people that no longer lived in the state, dead people that voted. It was just insane. And I don't know how you can look at those results and say, well, there's nothing to see here. So who knows? If nothing else, even if she doesn't get the job, she may still show that it was not just.
That's the thing. Can we at least, let's say things that there's no illegitimate stuff going on or anything like that. Can we at least calm the minds of the people that you claim you care about? I mean, that's the thing. So if nothing's going on, what does it hurt?
Sure.
Your tax dollars. In this case, if it's protecting the country and the vote, it's worth the tax dollars.
I want to make sure my tax dollars go to pay the right person.
Right, of course. Exactly.
If they didn't win, why are we paying them for doing the job?
So take my tax dollars to make sure that everything's good. Right. I'd rather go to that than at this point the school system.
Yeah. It's like, exactly, to make sure. And that's the thing. You nailed it just now. If the Democrat Party, they always talk about our sacred democracy. Right. If they care about it so much, you would think they would do something about actually protecting the sacred democracy.
Exactly.
And instead, they're like, well, no, we want to give everyone who breathes air the right to vote, even by lowering the voting age. Right. I mean, it's just...
Even if you weren't born here, it's like, okay.
It's just insanity. Well, that's one thing about this book that I'm reading that also goes into it. It's a book by Dick Morris, by the way.
Right.
Is... In California, you can vote now. Right now, it's only local elections. You can vote in California if you're not a legal citizen.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you cannot vote, at least not yet, at least not in name. You cannot vote in a national election, but even then, it's like, again, that's in name. Who knows what they allow behind closed doors. So,
but that's California. California will never change.
Yeah. Well, and again, it comes down to what we've been saying. Again, in a lot of ways, it applies to the dictatorship principle. Until they decide... We're sick of you, Newsom. We're sick of the Democrat policies. We're changing it. Nothing's going to change. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the weirdos congregate is California. So a lot of them are like, they're so weird that some of them are like, well, I don't like having high taxes, but what am I going to do in election time? Vote Democrat. It's like they don't really connect cause.
That's a good idea.
They don't connect cause and effect. And it's either that or they leave California and bring their stupid policies with them to other states. That's another problem.
It's like you keep shooting yourself in the foot, and it's like maybe I'll try a different gun and it won't fire. It's like
yeah, I like that.
Or idea, take the gun out of your hand and don't do that.
I like that a lot. Maybe if I change the gun, I won't shoot myself in the foot this time.
Right,
it's like, well, you're
if you won't pull the trigger and get rid of the gun. You won't shoot yourself in the foot in general.
Exactly.
But at this point, you're just changing
the size of the hole in your foot will be different, but you're still gonna shoot.
That's what happens in California and sadly right now our country. I mean that's what's happening is the size of the hole is changing, but the bleeding's still happening.
Exactly.
We're still getting shot in the foot.
Worse and worse and worse every time you pull that trigger.
Oh, and also get ready for your. Gas prices to go back up. That was nice.
So I think this is what I wanted to go into before going on to the next topic. So having to do with my thoughts on the midterms.
Yeah.
Are there irregularities in Arizona and Pennsylvania? Yes. Was that a factor? I think in certain races, yes. I wonder about Georgia. I do.
Yeah.
Warnock, I can't picture, this is the thing about Fetterman too. I can't picture someone waking up and saying, you know what I'm going to do today is vote for Fetterman.
Yeah.
Not very many. Now, some would, but I don't see how that many people could do that. Again, I think in Pennsylvania, maybe because it was too late for them to change their vote.
Right.
But when it comes to even Arizona, like people wanted to vote for Hobbs, and it was like, well, what's her position? I don't know. It's like, really? So not only that, but so I think on the one hand, are there irregularities at play? Yeah, in those areas in particular, yes.
Right.
Secondly, though, I think you actually said this to me on the phone whenever the election had almost just happened. You said, I don't think we're seeing a necessarily a bad situation as far as irregularities per se. You basically said, I don't think that's the whole thing, like nationally.
Yeah.
You basically said, I think a lot of it is just division.
Yeah.
Our country's divided. We want very different directions for this country.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that are going to actually go out there and pull that lever for just left-wing lunacy.
Right.
So I think there's some of that going on. And thirdly, and this to me is the, before I go to the third thing actually, which is actually, you mentioned gas prices.
Yeah.
I do think there's a factor there. I'll say, because Biden, number one, went to the Saudi family and begged to keep the oil coming in. They actually refused, so he's just using up reserves like crazy. And if he had not done that, gas prices would have stayed high. And I do think if that had been the case, the red wave would have actually materialized. Because a lot of people would have been like, you know what? We can barely afford to pay to put gas in our car. We're going out there, we're voting red.
And typically voters tend to be, single issue voters. And if you can affect a voter's wallet, they will tend to, be like, oh, well, my wallet's not really affected. And so it's like, yeah, I'll vote whatever. Or like, yeah, I don't really care, tend not to care as much. If you affect somebody's wallet, it's like, yeah, well, you need to get it, stay in or stay out. One of the two. A lot of voters are single issue voters, and what affects me and my wallet or me and my family type thing. So I agree with that.
And the next thing had to do with weak GOP leadership. I mean, to me, and there's been people that have said that certain were unpopular and for the wrong reasons. They were actually good candidates, but the GOP leadership didn't like them. I would need to look into specific instances of this, but it doesn't surprise me. Because does the GOP want good conservatives to win? Not really.
No.
They want the middle-of-the-road people to posture and say, look at us being strong as the Democrats, and then basically behind closed doors do.
It's like we want Bush Republicans back, and that's not what we want or need.
No. I think there's
no negotiating with these people.
I've had this thought. I actually think there's a lot of people that voted for Bush that are now not necessarily like for Bush. They've grown, they've changed.
Right.
But there's certain sections of the population that have not changed. They're still Bush Republicans. And to me, I don't know how you can say that with pride, because Bush was good in ways. I think in cultural issues, he was actually okay in certain ways, but he was definitely a globalist from what I can see. I'm nuanced on him. I think he's actually a Christian man that loves the country in a lot of ways.
I believe so too.
I think he's really a good example in a lot of ways of the road to hell being paved with good intentions.
Right.
Like, he had tons of good intentions, but he also signed that Patriot Act. He also got the TSA up and running, like Homeland Security, all that. Like
100%.
Just awful.
I like you said, I mean, I do believe that he's got good intents, but, road to hell with good intent.
Well, also now, then the bad thing was when Trump got the nomination, he refused to endorse him because his baby brother lost to him, basically. Yeah. And that was just petty and stupid.
Yeah,
so.
See, that's what, but, he's not the only guy to do that petty politics stuff.
Well,
and I can't stand that petty politics stuff.
And plenty of other people that at the time were in the Republican Party and thankfully have left the Republican Party. Most of them, there's people that refuse to go away, like AIDS. And I don't mean like White House AIDS, I mean the disease AIDS. But anyway, like your Liz Cheney's, like your Meghan McCain's, and like your Mitt Romney's, they refuse to leave, and they should. To me, back to the weak GOP leadership angle, until the GOP leadership changes and says, you know what, you're not doing what your constituents elected you to do, you're fired from the Republican Party, it's not going to change. Until the day where they basically say, you know what, you're going to finish out your term as a Republican, But if you want to seek re-election, you're going to do it as an independent.
Yep.
We are not allowing you to stay in our party.
Yep.
Until that happens, there's no need for them to actually deliver on their promises. And to me, that's why Ronna McDaniel, the chairwoman of the Republican Party, has got to go. She's not doing that.
Yeah.
None of them in high leadership of the Republican Party are doing that. And again, it's an optics game, kind of like we said earlier about Russia. A lot of things in this day and time are optics game. They don't want to look like you're an election denier, you're a pro-Putin. Again, they get slurred as or smeared, I should say, as a pro-Putin person.
Yeah, exactly.
And because anyone that is, right of Mitt Romney is smeared as that.
Yeah.
And so as a result, Ronna McDaniel stays in power, and it's awful. She needs to get out, and so do most of the Republican Party leadership, and get real conservatives in there. And that's 100%. The issue. So our last topic, or again, there's a couple of topics within this topic, but the main thing is having to do with the future. Obviously, big news, November the 15th of 2022, Trump made the big announcement he was at Mar-a-Lago, he was having to do with his future. He will run for president in 2024 election. And number one, before we go any further, I want to get your thoughts. Just how do you think? Did you watch the speech, by the way?
No, I didn't. Because I knew what it was going to be.
Okay. Did you hear any of it, even just like?
No, I actually didn't.
Okay.
Just because I don't know. I kind of figured it's like just going to be, he's running for president again. So I kind of figured I need to go back and just watch, just see what he said. But I think I caught something about bringing America back to, I forget. I saw one highlight, but nothing that I can quote. But yeah, so
sure. Well, generally speaking, there's been people that have brought cogent criticisms. In fact, someone that was never on the was on the Trump train really, really late, Ben Shapiro, had some very cogent criticisms to make. I actually said this in my podcast recently that. Just in terms of style, it didn't look really good. Like, he made the point, this was at Mar-a-Lago, and it was to about 1,000 people, and he was very calm the entire time. He thinks what actually would have been a kind of a neater moment would be to go kind of like what he did in Dayton, Ohio, which was a big bunch of people, and he should have declared, I'm running, kind of in a powerful way, and that's not what we got. It would have been an interesting declaration of running if he had changed things up. That's A, and B, when it comes to issues, I wish that he had said something more specific. He did mention it in passing, but I wish it was more specific about these irregularities we're seeing.
Yeah.
Just a solution. How do we fix it? And he said things like same-day voting and voter ID, but it's like, okay, but how do you get that? How do you get that through?
Yeah. What's the process?
We kind of know the policy that needs to happen.
Right.
How do you get that through?
Right.
So that's A. And B, another thing is all the big tech centric. What was the way that he kind of began his exit of the presidency? He got banned off Twitter.
Yeah.
What's your solution?
He's back on Twitter.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing too. That's very interesting. I didn't even write that down, but we can talk about that briefly. Yeah. But he made Truth Social, and everyone knows that. So I get that. But at the same time, what's your long-term solution?
Right.
Is it just for people like Elon Musk to buy out the companies, or is it for you to make social media companies?
Right.
What are you planning to do about these problems?
That's what we need to see
with big tech.
That's what we need to see from people is like, what's your process? We know the problems.
We need solutions.
Right. But like we know we have problems with the FBI. Okay, so what's your fix?
Well, and he actually, to me, is the only one that's got his hat in the ring who has a solution.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the Schedule F, which I think I told you about and I've told other people about, which is basically having the federal agencies answer to the head of the executive branch, which theoretically they should, but they're appointed, and appointed. And I mean, he can fire the director of the FBI. That's what he did with Comey, right?
Yeah.
But pretty much any other person he can't fire. And he ran into this problem with people in the DOJ, people in the FBI probing him, messing with him.
Yep.
And he basically is saying, here's my solution. And no one else that's got their name even thrown out there is saying, I will do that too.
Yeah, that's some of the big stuff. Like in 2024 is a lot of the GOP, the Dems, they have their own set of problems as far as what they're going to have to answer to. But, for the GOP, yeah.
We don't have enough time to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as the GOP, whoever runs, we know Trump's in there, but whoever ends up running, for their list of problems, we can't just hear a bunch of, we have these problems in America. all the GOP voters know the problems we have. We all agree on the problems. That's the thing. We agree. We don't necessarily agree on the problem. For the most part, we agree on the problems.
Yeah.
There's some problems that we don't necessarily see eye to eye for sure. But major problems like the FBI, stuff like COVID, stuff like that. It's okay, so let's take those big ones and all right, what's your process here? And really I think it'll come down to a matter of whoever gets nominations, which process did you trust more? So yeah, that's what I'm hoping to see from a lot of whoever runs is just what's the processes and everything. Can't just be a guy repeating what problems are.
Big tech is something he should have talked about, and I want to see him take a harder stance on social issues, I will say. He's taken a good one. Well, one thing that he said that caught my attention, and look, I'm not saying it's a bad stance, I just think it should go further, was having to do with basically we're going to make sure that, and even then I wonder what the implementation of this is, that men don't play in sports against women, and we're going to protect our women and girls in bathrooms, again, good things, but it's how are you going to fight the culture war battle, which is not, that is a symptom. The problem is the prevalence of an LGBT agenda.
Right.
How do you actually stop that from taking place? Because again, if that was stopping, there would be no men going into bathrooms. Right. There would be no having to go and compete against boys and girls sports. So,
and then your question also becomes, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
ahead,
there, but the question becomes, is that a federal thing or is it a states thing? And I'd like to see it a federal thing, of course, but the question is, all right, is it really within the president's power, or is it more of a state's power thing?
Right. Or are you just going to be encouraging that as president? And that's kind of what Teddy Roosevelt talked about, the bully pulpit, which is not to force, but to encourage.
Right, of course.
And I think there's a healthy aspect of that.
Lead from the front.
Right, right. And so anyway, that's kind of our comments on the speech. Obviously, the thing we were going to talk about the last episode was there's been some already moments of DeSantis and Trump kind of, bumping against each other. Not hard, but there's been some little conflicts here and there. This is the thing that's interesting, is that there's been some comments by someone that claims to be a DeSantis staffer, a former DeSantis staffer, that DeSantis thinks behind closed doors that Trump had no business running for president, that he's a basically big blowhard reality show host. And but the question becomes, okay, so you say that he said that. Did DeSantis say that before Trump became president or after? Because a lot of people, again, said in 2016 thought that.
Right, of course.
Tons of people that then
the Daily Wire.
Right. Tons of people. So the question becomes, when did he say that, and has he changed his mind? And there's just a ton of questions there. And secondly, also behind closed doors at first, and now more recently a little bit more out in the open, Trump had made a couple of comments about DeSantis, and that included the time, of course, the one that a lot of people talked about, where he was at a rally I think this was in Dayton, Ohio as well, reading a poll, and he made the comment basically instead of saying Ron DeSantis, he said Ron DeSanctimonious. Just generally speaking, what's your take on what I just said regarding what DeSantis may or may not have said and Trump?
I mean, if DeSantis said what he said, just like with Trump, I think it's kind of stupid on that end of things, because let's say DeSantis said what he said. You're not even running yet. Now depending on the time he said this, I don't know. Mm-hmm. If he said that now, it's you got a couple questions of well, what were your thoughts when he was running, and why do you think that now? So there's that. But also, why are you attacking the guy now when you haven't even put in, your ticket to run yet? Anyway, mm-hmm. we don't know if he is going to run or not. I personally think it would be not a smart decision on his end. We'll see. But if he does, we'll see what happens. And then the Trump thing, I don't agree with the Trump attacking DeSantis either right now, because, right now I think the GOP, what they're missing that the Democrat Party has is the unity. Now again, I know on the end of things, you also have to, you have to beat your opponents. So that's how you win in politics. You have to beat somebody, of course.
Sure.
But it's like, why are you attacking a guy that's not even running yet? You know,
Right.
it's like, of course, there's potential that he does,
Right.
but nobody else has put in their ticket yet. So it's like, I don't know. I right now I don't like it just because, again, nobody's put in their tickets yet except for, you know, Trump, of course. So it's like, what are you gaining from this? Nothing really, except for you're making, on Trump's end of things, you know, with attacking DeSantis, you're making people dislike DeSantis for no reason when he possibly isn't even running against you. And now you're going to have people thinking these things against DeSantis for no reason. And that could damage things, you know, just later. I don't know.
Couple things. So one thing I thought of also, this staffer, which again, it's an anonymous staffer that says he worked for DeSantis.
Right.
And assuming that's true, another thing that he said about DeSantis' thoughts on Trump was basically, he said, actually, again, he says DeSantis said that if he runs against Trump, his approach will be to launch a full frontal assault on his record on COVID. And I think the other thing would be like on the wall. Basically, he would say, he actually quoted DeSantis, if this is the case, this is what the staffer said,
Yeah.
that he would turn to Trump in a debate and say, you said you're going to build the wall, where's the wall? Now, here's the thing. A lot of the wall did get built, not what he was promising,
Yeah.
but we've already alluded to some of the reasons why his hands are tied behind his back. And
Yep.
also, it was a big high point of his presidency was when he sat in that office with Chuck and Nancy and said, I will shut down the government if you don't give me, I think it was a couple $1 billion to build the wall.
Yeah.
He tried.
Yeah.
He really tried. And so DeSantis can attack him on that front, I guess. But the one place he may have him somewhat beat is COVID.
He's got him beat on
I
COVID,
could
I think.
see that.
Yeah.
Because even though DeSantis did shut Florida down, he reopened it the fastest.
Oh, yeah.
And so
And the most successful, too.
Right. And so for that reason, and he was also very good about masks and vaccines. He was very much about choice. You have your choice.
He's been good about pushback, as far, at least COVID-wise. You know,
Sure.
pushback against, you know, the media. And Trump's good at pushback, but, you know, we've seen his hands get tied, and he's not very, once his hands do get tied, he's kind of stuck, which, I mean, most people are, but I mean, the media and just a lot of people had a tough time tying down DeSantis. So that is a thing. Now, again, on other issues, I don't know, but at least with COVID, we do kind of see that, you know, for DeSantis there.
Well, and I think part of, you just said, and again, I said too, that Trump's hands can get tied.
Yeah.
I think part of his effort to not let that happen again is the Schedule F about firing federal
of course.
employees. The other thing I was going to say about this whole situation, I do wonder if Trump said what he said about DeSantis in an effort to basically, here's the thing. I think it's in a way kind of backfiring. I think he did it in a way to say, hey, you better not run. And unfortunately, that may goad DeSantis into running.
Yeah.
He may be like, you know what, bud? I will run against you.
Why don't you want me to run?
Yeah. I wonder if it's going to have that unfortunate after effect.
Yeah.
It may not. The thing is, politics is all a bloodbath. And before we go into, and I'll allude very quickly, I think that a lot of the Republicans that are going to run in 2024 are actually going to be a lot of the same characters from 2016. Other than Ben Carson, I don't think he'll run. Scott Walker might.
I wish Ben Carson would run again. Though.
Scott Walker might.
Well, not again, but
Ted Cruz might. To be honest, I could even see like a Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
Heck, Liz Cheney is teasing it again. She's not going to do well, but she's saying she
the next
could.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, right.
God.
So there's just so many. I just think a lot of the same people are going to think they have a shot and they're going to run. Even
And
like,
none of them will get the vote.
not
enough.
very many. The only way they could is if the big conservatives are tied between Trump and DeSantis, and then the remainders all go to Rubio or all go to Cruz. That could actually be like a disaster scenario for the right.
And I don't see it happening for Rubio though, just because Rubio's stances on like border control and stuff aren't tough enough.
No.
Especially for even just the guys that don't like Trump or DeSantis. You know, it's like that they. Yeah, Rubio's not really strong there.
Mm-hmm. Also, just generally speaking, he's super vanilla.
Yeah. Now, I could see Ted Cruz possibly, if he ran again, I could see him possibly being a threat. I mean, because he was a threat to Trump, you know. he hung in there. I still don't see him getting the vote. But I could see him hanging in there with those guys. I mean, I do like Ted Cruz. I mean, and especially what he's done, even with when Trump was in office, I mean, and even after, he's spoke out. He's fought against this. Another guy that could is Rand Paul. I don't know.
That would be very interesting.
You see him putting in a ticket possibly?
I don't think against Trump. I think he will run in the future. I mean,
he's a good talker.
If he ran against Trump, that would just be tricky because he actually really got in a lot of ways on the Trump train.
Oh yeah.
Once Trump got elected, and he's been phenomenal on COVID and just several things.
Fauci.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think he would run against Trump. There's a possibility, I guess, but I don't think it would be a smart move for much of anyone to run against Trump because it's just like, I think it would turn into a lot of ways a bloodbath.
Yeah.
But either way you slice it. But again, that's not to say no one will. I think a lot of people actually will. They're going to try and get their shot. They're going to basically think they have a shot. They're going to get greedy and run against him. So one thing I wanted to go on to had to do with how the numbers are shaping up. So this one, now again, keep in mind it's in Florida, so you got to take this with a grain of salt. But DeSantis in this GOP primary poll is actually leading Trump. So Governor Ron DeSantis is leading former President Trump by 45 percentage points in a new poll of 2024 Republican primary voters conducted in the wake of DeSantis' landslide re-election. So again, you got to think, DeSantis had a really good re-election. He was way ahead and did extremely well. And so,
if you don't win your state, though, that's from Florida. So, like you said, you kind of have to take that, with a grain of salt. Because if you don't win your state, I think that's a problem. And actually, it's panned out to be a problem if you can't win your state.
So basically, 66% of these voters in the Sunshine State favor their governor, DeSantis, versus compared to 21% who remain loyal to President Trump, essentially.
And I think that's because they've seen it.
And this is made by Sox Media and presented in a newsletter produced by Florida Politics. So I'm not that especially concerned about that because it's in Florida itself. So like you just said, you're going to probably like your own governor. Plus, a lot of people moved to Florida because of DeSantis.
Right.
So, of course, they're going to like DeSantis, probably over Trump. So that's just not a huge surprise to me. And there's other polls as well. Some where I've been told that they're actually kind of neck and neck, and some where Trump was ahead. So this is another one having to do by The Hill, Trump versus DeSantis, how the two GOP heavyweights match up. So this is 2 years away from the next the next presidential election, I should say, and we're just now getting into the primary. When you look at the results of this poll, there's a couple of things. There's different questions about who's more popular. One question in the poll that I just told you about had to do with who they think would be a good role model for young people. That one was very much DeSantis over Trump, which is not really a surprise because
that's not a shocker.
Considering the life that Trump has led, but the argument has been for a long time that we're not voting for a role model like something like that. We're voting for a leader, president,
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway, to get to the number, a poll in Iowa put DeSantis 11 points clear of Trump, a marked turnaround from a similar poll in August when the Florida governor had been behind by 15 points. So, my thing is, are you asking the same areas of Iowa demographically? Who are you speaking to as old, young people?
Right.
I just have questions.
What are the demographics?
I just have questions. And so one that had to do was an Economist YouGov poll that was this week that indicated that 46% of Republican voters would prefer DeSantis to be the nominee compared to 39% who would favor Trump. So that one's 36 to 49, so it's not as extreme as the Florida one, obviously, which is to be expected. So there was another one that asked whether they had favorable or unfavorable views of the politicians, and Trump and DeSantis actually both hit the exact same number. 41% both thought that, of these Americans, 41% of them thought that Trump and DeSantis were favorable. And actually, so the favorables were actually neck and neck. The unfavorables were actually higher for Trump than they were for DeSantis, which I could kind of see. Again, Trump was president. Trump has been in the public eye for a longer time, decades. And so, anyway, these seem to show that, according to these polls, that Trump was ahead. But another one that I saw that was interesting is that apparently a lot of people are saying that no matter what, they don't want it to be Trump and Biden in 2024.
Yeah.
People don't want Biden to run again, and some people also are saying they don't want Trump to run again.
Yeah.
Now, I think of the people that don't want Trump to run again, would they vote for him if it was him or Biden? Probably.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't want him to be the choice, is the point. Me personally, I think he's a really good option right now. We kind of know what we're going to get, and especially if he's going to demonstrate, and again, he seems to be demonstrating he's learned his lesson regarding the agencies. Where I need to see is regarding the endorsements. There's got to be some recognition of, I'm not going to endorse the people that the GOP hands me.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into these people, and if they're not MAGA actual candidates, that's a no-go. I'm not going to endorse them. And because that's important. I mean, that's, I think, another part of this issue with the midterms is that a lot of his base even was like, you know what, I just don't want to go vote for Oz. You know what, I'm not that thrilled with this candidate here.
Oz was a very weak endorsement.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been better than Fetterman. But, no, that like you said, that's a big thing for me. I'm one of the guys that doesn't necessarily, I'm iffy on Trump right now. A lot of my questions is, you say you think he's learned. Has he? And has he learned how to get himself out of when his hands are tied? Has he learned not to get his hands tied? And the schedule would help with a lot of that, of course. But, the Dems are always, 2 steps ahead, it seems, or sometimes. So I don't know. Also, just the age. The age is a thing. That's also one of the reasons that I don't like Biden. I mean, there's a lot of reasons there, but just in general, let's say Biden was a Republican and he's not, but let's say he was. The age does play a factor to an extent. So that's again, if he was the nominee, 100%, I'm voting for him. 100% of the time over Biden, no question, or any Democrat that would run, 100%, no question. But if we could get a possible stronger one in there, depending on what their solutions are and everything, then there is a solid chance that I could see myself again. I want to see him in debates and everything else, what they stand for, and just what border control, et cetera, what's their processes. That's what I want to see, and if I think those are stronger, and if I think that they're just a stronger candidate, I could see myself voting against Trump possibly.
My thing is, like, he at least to me is the best one that I can think of out of all the options.
Oh yeah,
especially out of all the options in 2016. Like, most of the other ones in there were either, like I said about Rubio, vanilla, or just establishment types that the left does not truly fear. I think they legitimately fear Trump.
Right.
To me, the big thing that clinched it for me, I was already getting more sympathetic to him, but the Mar-a-Lago raid clinched it because it just showed they really don't want this guy running. They've tried to get him on January 6th. They've tried to get him on Russiagate and the Ukraine phone call, all of this.
Yeah.
It didn't work. Now they're trying to get him on, you left office illegally. We're going to try and put you in jail over that as a former president. They also tried to impeach him as a former president, too. That was just weird. So to me, and they also, for a while, tried to get some kind of an amendment in there where if you had been a president and were impeached, you can't run for re-election. So it's like they're clearly trying to keep this guy out. I haven't seen any effort made against a Republican politician in my lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
And for that reason, if you're making all these people that fearful and angry...
There's clearly a reason.
There's clearly a reason, and it's a good one in my book.
Oh, yeah.
So for that reason, he at least right now is the best one, unless there's someone that comes out that is better on war, better on immigration, better on social issues, and better on culture.
Yeah.
He's got my support. And again, I can back the Trump train, which I am, and still offer cogent criticisms and say,
100%.
Look, you need to do better about this. You need to do better about this. And that's my mindset is I can still be fair and have principles without saying I'm not backing you, because overall he's going in the right direction.
Oh, yeah.
And again, to me, he's the biggest wrecking ball against the establishment right now. And until there's someone else that's just as good against the establishment, I'm not for it. Now, one thing that I saw, and this is actually from just a random friend on Facebook, was that apparently DeSantis at times has expressed approval of the 2014 Ukrainian coup. And I have questions about that. Have you learned your... Now, again, back to learning lessons. Has he learned his lesson about that?
Yeah, people change.
He very much could have.
Right,
he very much could say, oh, that's not good. We thought we were doing something better in Ukraine and we didn't.
Yeah.
Or would he say, you know what, to this day, I'm still for that.
Yeah.
That's a serious question. In fact, if Trump or some debate moderator should bring that up.
Right, yeah.
Part of this whole political process, this is what's so pathetic, is that the debates have got to change for the better. A friend of mine who you've met, I'll tell you off air, that's mentioned this, is you've got to get better moderators. Like the idea that Chris Wallace was going to moderate between Biden and Trump, get a Ben Shapiro in there. Get some, because here's the thing, Shapiro would have had very cogent criticisms of Trump.
Right.
Why did you do this? Why did you not do this?
Yeah.
He also would have had extremely good criticisms against Biden.
Right, of course.
That they would never do that.
Right.
It's just, again,
get guys that actually, aren't going to be paid to sway, a vote, to try and make one guy look better than the other. Get guys that just want what's best for the country,
or make neither one of them look bad. Like you want to have actual fairness of good questions that are tough,
100%.
that are tough. And
100%.
So, to be honest, I was telling you earlier in the prep to kind of somewhat switch topics, unless you want to go back to DeSantis and Trump. Well, I'll actually ask you this before we move on to the Dems, because I told you I don't think they have any options. But real quick, so let's say DeSantis does not run. Let's say it's Cruz and a number of other people. Again, the same cast of characters pretty much, except for, let's say, not DeSantis and not Rand Paul,
right,
but they're going against Trump, the rest of them. Do you support Cruz over Trump? Do you support other people? Like, who would you support over Trump that you can think of? If it's not DeSantis, I'm taking away DeSantis and Rand Paul from you on purpose, because I know you like these guys.
Yeah.
But if it's Cruz, would you go with Cruz over Trump?
No, I'd probably go with Trump.
Okay.
I mean, either way, those two are both a win-win in my opinion. I like them both, like, equally, in all honesty. I did vote for Trump over Cruz at the time, but I think Cruz has kind of turned into a pretty big force. So, and it's a win-win, but I think I probably would vote for Trump just because we know what we're getting.
Okay.
There, you could make the argument, well, you know what you're getting with Cruz too, but not in a president seat. So it's like, so I think that's why Trump would get my vote over Cruz. The one guy that I might, if Ben Carson ran again, the thing with Carson is he's not going to get the vote anyway.
He can't beat Trump.
Yeah, he can't. That's the thing. But if he was more vocal, if he figured it out, I could possibly see myself, because I like his flat tax rule. I like a lot of his stances. Also, he's a good, godly Christian man too. That's a big, big thing for me too.
He makes me think in a lot of ways of like Calvin Coolidge, who was a very quiet, soft-spoken person.
Right, and you can't, and especially against Trump, you kind of got to voice your opinion a little more.
Well, yeah, again, especially against him, but I also think in a different, maybe not this election, but another one that could be. I'd have to hear Carson's policies again.
Right. Yeah.
But I like the flat tax, like you said, and again, I would like to have a country where what the president says is not as big of a deal. I think Carson could give us that.
Yeah. So it's like, if he happened to, actually fight, which again, I don't think that he'd win it. But I could see myself possibly voting for him over Trump, just because, again, I liked him actually more even back in 2016, 2016 and everything. So that was my guy.
Yeah, but if it's DeSantis versus Trump, you would be for DeSantis, correct?
Yeah, for DeSantis. Although again, I say right now, just based off the COVID stuff, I will say that I don't know a lot of his other policies. I want to listen to all his other policies and just what his process would be, and what are his big problems as far as what he thinks social issue wise and everything. So I would want to see that. And but I do like DeSantis' demeanor a little more. I think he's handled the media a little better than Trump to an extent. He does take the attack of it. He does take the process of attacking the media, but it's done a little more professionally instead of the whole name calling tactic and everything. I don't know. I just like his tactics a little more. which does play a little bit of a factor, small factor, but to me it does play a little bit of a factor. But yeah, no, right now I think I could see myself voting for DeSantis over Trump, but again, I'd want to see the debates and
Yeah, I mean that's my thing is I don't know enough about. I know DeSantis seems to be pro-business. There's no income tax in Florida. That's really cool.
As we see, I mean, business is flocking into Florida.
Yeah. So I mean, we know that, and we know that he's pretty solid on COVID. But other than that, there's just a lot of unknown for DeSantis. Right. And again, we seem to know what we get with Trump. But you would go with Rand Paul over Trump?
Rand Paul. I mean, he hopped on the Trump train there. Mm-hmm. So
again, I don't think he will run against Trump, but if he did,
I mean, his history. I mean, he put Fauci on the chopping block. I mean, if he sat there and said, "Look, we're gonna go after these guys," and with the COVID stuff, I mean, that's big. Going after these guys and holding them accountable. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, that's almost kind of like the whole Schedule F for Trump. To an extent, holding these guys accountable, like kind of putting these guys, on the guillotines here, not literally, but political guillotines, and actually holding them accountable and saying, look, you guys did. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's that would be a big thing if that's what he ran on. I could see myself possibly doing that.
And again, I don't think he will this time around. No. Interesting follow-up before we again, I keep wanting to go to the Dems, but this is just so interesting.
Yeah.
Who do you think Trump might choose as his VP?
Not Pence.
I don't think the base would like that. I don't think Trump, frankly, would like that to go with Pence. So
that won't happen.
I mean, people have been throwing out. There's even bumper stickers. I've seen them. Trump and DeSantis.
And I think that's a bad idea.
Okay.
I think that's a bad idea. More so just on DeSantis' side of like, okay, you lose. What's the point of leaving your state? And the two personalities are both two alpha big dog guys that one of them would have to get knocked down a peg to run behind the other. I just don't see that happening.
Okay.
Again, could it? I don't. Sure, of course, but
if the only way I could see that happening is not Pence, DeSantis makes a plan and says, and basically Trump says, look, if you help me as my VP, the minute that I'm out of office, I'm going to back your presidential run.
Yeah.
I could see DeSantis saying, you know what, that's a good plan.
Yeah, it would be.
That's a calculated plan, and I'll go along with that.
Yeah.
That is something where he actually would say, you know what, I'm going to let you take the lead, Trump, and when you're done being president, then I'll run, and you endorse me.
Basically, just run off. Let's continue. Let's keep it
not
rolling.
even the Obama thing. I think of kind of Reagan and Bush.
Yeah, that's true.
Except better, obviously.
Right. Of course.
I mean, think about how awesome it would be to have another 4 years of Trump and then 8 years of DeSantis.
Yeah, exactly. And you can run off that. Like, hey, look, we made your 4 years great. If
DeSantis is good on the issues, especially. Again, hopefully better than Bush. I don't know why. I don't know how that's a low bar, right?
That's
a really low bar,
right?
So anyway, having to do with that, I could see a deal that they make. Other than that, I kind of agree with you. They would have to make that deal for that to work.
If that deal doesn't happen, I don't see a good reason for DeSantis to leave Florida.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm worried about. Is like, DeSantis, what he did with Florida, just turning it so red. It's like. We don't want it to possibly turn purple or blue again.
If he leaves, what happens? Like, who's the next governor?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's the question.
Exactly. So that's the worry that I have with him leaving. So that would be the one thing of like that's the one thing I don't like is that VP.
Sure.
Ticket.
I mean, I've been thinking one name that some people have thrown out is Tim Scott. That would be interesting.
Rand Paul, Rand Paul.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I could get behind that full-heartedly. That would be pretty
Especially
cool.
because I mean he fits with Trump because Trump wants to hold people accountable, and Rand Paul he wants to. He wants to hold people accountable on different ends of COVID and stuff, so that could put a little bug in his ear to add stuff to who we're holding accountable.
I think that in a way could be really good because I think Trump is a big picture guy and Rand is a details guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that he would in a way very much fit into that role.
I kind of like that a little more than DeSantis.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Yeah. I could see Trump's Trump's the broad brush and he's kind of the finer point brush.
Yeah.
And so there's that. I mean, that's what I wonder, again, we got to look at history. What did Trump do? He chose a guy that was kind of a no-name.
Yeah.
I wonder if Trump's going to find another kind of no-name. It's like, well, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And then once people found out who Pence was, he was actually beloved by the electorate until the very end.
Yeah.
Until the very end. So he could find
And
someone.
He was a good speaker in the debates too.
Right.
I mean,
and that's maybe what happens. Trump finds some kind of somewhat no-name and chooses him. And then once people find out who he is, they're like, great, we're all in.
But I don't necessarily know if that's a good side on his end, because like DeSantis, I mean not DeSantis, like Pence, kind of left him when things hit the fan. So it's like on his end, I'd pick somebody that's kind of like been on the Trump train this whole way through.
That's the other thing. He's been president 4 years in the past, so I feel like we'll know his name somehow. Know the person's name somehow.
Right.
I don't know. To me, again, it may be a surprise, but it might be a really good surprise. Like, you just be like, I didn't know you were going to choose him, but that's cool. So we'll see. We'll see as far as that regard goes, and it's exciting to me personally. That is one thing that's like a big question mark. Who are you going to choose? And because he hasn't said so yet, and he's probably going to wait. I do wonder if he's going to wait kind of late to announce that. Because he waited pretty late to announce Pence. He, I think, had already won the nomination when he announced that he had chosen his VP choice. Which is kind of a big deal. Because I think I want to say Cruz chose his, and I want to say wasn't that she was the CEO of Hewlett Packard, Carly Fiorina. He chose her while he was still in the primary. He hadn't even won the primary because he obviously went on to lose. He went on to lose.
Right.
So and Trump hadn't chosen Pence until after. So I could see Trump waiting. He may not wait that long this time because he also didn't wait that long to announce. He actually, by comparison, he announced June of 2015 he was running. By that metric, it would be like him announcing in June of 2023. So he didn't wait that long to run. He may, by that same token, announce his VP choice earlier than the previous time.
Right. In
a way, it kind of would be a good move, but the only thing about that is, would it help or hurt his chances of winning the vote? Of winning the primary, and even like getting close to the general? That's got to be a calculated move. And I don't know, one person that would be very interesting. Do you know anything about Tom Homan?
No.
Former ICE director.
Oh, really?
Tough as nails.
Okay.
Tough as nails. That would be, see, if he's going to emphasize immigration, the former ICE director, because this guy is hardcore. If you've seen any clips of AOC getting schooled by a former ICE director, it's him.
Okay, I got you.
Super New Yorker when he talks.
I got you. Okay.
But the only thing about that, do we want to vote for two strong New Yorkers? It might be good to have a strong New Yorker, and again, a guy that's a little bit less, like Rand Paul would be that. He's a Kentuckian boy. So...
I think you need that compliment. You don't need somebody that's exactly like Trump. You need that guy that compliments Trump.
Sure.
It's like, again, that's why I like the whole Rand Paul idea, because it's like you said, Trump's the broad brush, and then you got...
And something about Tim Scott is he's actually kind of like, he's a little bit softer and quieter, and by that same token... You gotta be
careful on the quiet part, though, because, like, for example, Trump picked Ben Carson. You never hear from... Like, Trump would never listen to him. I mean, sadly, because I think he's got some good ideas. I mean, I really do, and,
of course.
And he's a good guy, so it's like, hey, you should listen to him, but he's not going to. So you do need a guy that is clearly has an alpha mentality and clearly opinionated, kind of like, Rand Paul, or like DeSantis, except for I don't know if I think DeSantis is more of a broad brush guy, not a fine point guy. So we'll see. But the VP choice I think would be really important, and it needs to be a guy that is strong and opinionated, but also more there to just assist him, and but also be like, hey, this is, be a bug in his ear. Like, hey, this is an issue that we do need to address, or something else.
Sure.
So
only a few minutes left, but real quick, when it comes to the Democrats, to me, if you're a Democrat strategist, you've got to know you're in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I told you in prep for this, like, they've got to make the decision, do we try to sweep the Biden administration under the rug, or do we try to pretend, and they can try to do this because they've got the media, things were not that bad, it was all Putin and Trump's fault, therefore Biden administration was good, vote for us. Or they've got to say, you know what, we realize we need to cut our losses. We're going to get Biden out of here and try to pretend that we're putting a new face on the party.
They won't do that.
To me, I don't know what they can do. Like they've got almost no options. The other thing is Biden is saying he's going to run. Whether he's actually going to is another matter, because that's another thing I saw in doing the research for this. Again, he says, well, the electorate says they want me to run, but he has not officially announced. So the fact that he hasn't officially announced, he's probably trying to figure out, or his handlers are trying to figure out, what can we peddle to the masses?
Yeah.
That's a tough sell. It's a very tough sell to this guy that had under his watch gas prices go up as high as they did. We're going to reelect that guy. Not only that, that's just one little symptom of his gas prices. So if you can't do that, can you run Harris? That's a really tough sell.
No.
Again, like you mentioned in prep,
she would be probably your weakest candidate.
Horrible numbers in the DNC primary. You know, like the DNC primaries in 2020, she did horribly.
Yeah.
She was starting to do well because she was talking a little bit more like a Bernie Sanders, and then she stopped doing that, and that's when her ratings, I mean, she was already not doing great, but they went even down further, and the whole Tulsi Gabbard versus her thing happened.
Yeah. And she's just weird. I mean, she is. I'm sorry. Like, what do people see in her in general? I don't know, but she's not smart. No. She's just not smart.
No. She's got that in common with the presidents.
Well, yeah, of course. But she's also not a good talker. Also in common with our president.
Yeah.
But at least he has an excuse. I don't know. But no, she's not a good talker, and you know, I talk about good talkers and like winning smiles and stuff like that. Does play a factor into people liking you, winning people's votes, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I do think that her not being a good talker would honestly ruin her, you know, just running. So I don't think the DNC will allow it. I mean, I say allow as far as like who they're going to pick, but I don't think that'll happen. The two that I'm kind of afraid of as far as just who I could see actually going far and actually winning it is, you know, AOC. Because apparently, as you said, as we talked on the phone, you know, she actually would be eligible. So I could see that.
By the way, I had that wrong. I think I may have said in a previous episode that she's too young. I had it wrong. I thought she was going to be too young by a few months. She's actually old enough by a few months.
Right. So I could see her, but it's all a question of what the DNC wants to do. Do we want to run with what we did with Biden as far as like, yeah, we're not socialist and communist and all this stuff, but we secretly are, but we're going to run it like we're not, even though we are. Mm-hmm. That are we going to run with that, or are we just going to go full-blown plan, which would be AOC, of like, yeah, we're socialist and communist and we want this, and this, like just in your face. Sure. I don't know if that worked, but
Well, and then the other thing is, if they go with that plan, number one, you've got to win the primary on that plan.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've got to try to win the general, and the question is, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And are you going to kind of do with the Biden thing, which was a big Trojan horse of we're not, but we are?
Yeah.
Or are you going to say, no, we're going to actually be, in a weird way, honest?
Yeah.
Again, that's a calculated move they've got to make.
I think the reason AOC kind of worries me, although I think Trump could mop the floor with her to an extent, just because she's never done it.
He's done pretty well so far.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much. But the thing that worries me about her is the fact that she's young. A lot of people do, if you look at polls, a lot of people do want to see younger, on both sides, Republican and Democrat, myself included. I do want to see some younger people, not necessarily AOC's age, but like I don't necessarily want that young, but I would like to see some younger people in there. Mm-hmm. You know, that I think that would be nice instead of, you know, what we've got now. Again, if plans are good, but still, you know, a younger face and just knowing that they're going to survive and not questioning every day, hey, when are we going to see Biden bit the dust? I mean,
yeah,
you know, like, yeah, so I do think that she could get a younger vote based off that. Also, you know, we'll see if she gets, you know, the women vote. Being a woman, she could get the woman vote, and that's very important.
And I just had the thought. The thing is, like, she'll run on the fact that she's a minority.
Yep.
And she's a woman.
Right.
And the only one that can beat her as far as the Democrats are concerned goes is another minority that's also a woman.
Yep.
And then it's going to come down to, okay, DNC and establishment, who are you going to side with?
Exactly.
And here's the thing, I just had the thought. If they go with Harris versus her, where they give AOC tons about Harris good press, which that's a hard thing to do, trying to make Harris look good is hard. But they'll run on, she's been VP, it's time. It's time for her to be the first president too. Then the question becomes, again, I made videos about this as well, it's going to be like a DNC civil war of, like you just said, the full-blown socialists versus the Trojan horse socialists. And no matter what, 2024 is going to be very interesting.
And then the other one that I'm kind of worried about is that nobody's talking about is Michelle Obama. You know, talking about how if anybody was going to run against AOC, it would have to be like another minority or you know, a woman. Well, she checks both those boxes.
She does.
And you know, the Democrat, you know, the DNC loves, you know, the Obama era, and hence why Biden, you know, that was their guy, because it's like, you know, he's going to progress Obama's stuff and also progress the socialist point of view as well. Michelle Obama, same thing. I mean, she's an Obama, so therefore she's going to progress the Obama view and then also progress the socialist. Because I mean, come on, we know, But so I could see her being a thing because she's going to get the Obama voters. She has a chance to get the younger voters. She probably would get the minority voters, although a lot of minorities have kind of turned against the Obama and have seen how the Obama era, you know, screwed them. So I don't know. Some,
but I don't know if it's enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's a question of, has Trump swayed enough of the minority voters, you know, to his side now? Mm-hmm. And because, I mean, we have seen a lot of the black population, for example, to swing that way. The question, I honestly think it's a question of, where's the Hispanic vote going? You know, I could see that.
That's one factor.
Especially with the legals.
Well, a lot of legals tend to be more towards Trump.
Right.
Legals, but of course the illegals are not.
Yeah.
Again, that to me is truly a mixed field.
Like, right, exactly.
They actually tend to go Democrat, but it's kind of a 60-40 thing going on.
Right, exactly.
60-40 thing going on.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which 40%, not too bad for the odds. How you get that higher, that's hard because you don't want to betray the rest of the base. You want to make sure they get what they want.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah,
immigration control.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Yeah. You don't want to go out and out-left the left or anything like that, because that's not a good tactic.
No.
But those are the two, and people talk about, you know, well, Newsom, well, all anybody, just in the DNC has to bring up, well, you suck in California, so you're going to suck with the United States. Which they wouldn't say, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the Democrats love California and love Newsom, so it's kind of like...
Yeah, so they wouldn't say that, but is that really your guy to go up against the GOP?
But again, the other thing about him is he's not a woman and he's not a minority.
Exactly.
So
he's another white guy.
So for that reason... But Biden beat the women and minorities.
But he had the minority with him.
Yeah, so again, there's... To me, again, if I'm a Democrat strategist, I would just throw up my hands and say, I got no idea.
Yeah, and now the question is, where do you think the DNC is going to go? Do you think that they're going to say, all right, we're going with the socialist agenda completely in your face? Or do you think that we go with, you know, the Biden approach again? Not necessarily Biden, but the Biden approach.
I've got no way of knowing, because if you listen to the Young Turks, they're very much about being open socialists, and they have a huge following. So does Sam Cedar of the Majority Report.
Right.
They have, by comparison, have a huge following. CNN has just terrible following.
Right.
And MSNBC. So if you go where the numbers are at, you would think they would actually go the full-blown socialist way, but that's not what they did in 2020, and the numbers are almost identical then.
And I think that's for the swing votes, though.
Yeah, again, that's the other factor.
Yeah.
That's the other factor.
So that kind of knocks AOC out then.
Yeah.
So your only other bet is we go back with Biden. Mm-hmm. We're not, if you're the DNC, you're stupid for running Kamala. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just dumb and political suicide. I think your best bets are you go with Biden again, or you go with Michelle Obama. AOC, unless you want to run with the in your face AOC maybe, and you can't run with Bernie again. Bernie, I think, has lost too much support, and just he's also old.
And I think he will lose more support if he does run, because his supporters will go to whoever the next best person is.
And Warren, she's not going anywhere. None of the shoot, what's his name? The Buttigieg. He's not going anywhere. Actually, Buttigieg, I don't think he's going anywhere, but he could be a force later. The reason I say this is because he talks like Obama. The one thing about Obama is Obama was a good talker. And in politics, talking is a lot.
Sure. Sure.
And how you talk and persuade. I mean, because politics is persuasion, and Obama did a lot of that as far as, just making his ideas, sound really good. They weren't, but they sounded good. At least, if you're an uneducated voter, it sounds really good. So it's like, yeah, why not? Buttigieg, I gotta admit, he's a good speaker, and that kind of scares me. So I don't know, but I don't think he'll get it now.
I actually could see him running in 2024, whether he's successful or not. Again, he's gay, but he's a white man.
Yeah,
and so
a gay Christian.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's funny. No, it's not. Anyway, I told you in preparation for this, I actually think a lot of the 2020 characters of the Democrat primary will run again. I think Jay Inslee will probably run again. Again, it just comes down to who's successful and who's not.
Right.
And it's difficult to say. It is. The other thing is Biden going to be told, yeah, if you run, we, the DNC, will back you, or no, you're not running again? Who knows how that conversation is going to go.
I think the DNC has realized that, this was a bad idea. What did we do?
I hope so.
I don't hope so.
Okay.
I honestly don't hope so. Let Biden run again. Let him do it, please. Because I honestly, I think that's the horrible. If they let him run again, what's he got to run on? Oh, look, it's been great. No, it hasn't.
No.
And Trump would never let that go in a debate. No, it has not.
No.
I don't know.
Also, that would be amazing to see again.
Oh yeah, but I honestly don't want to see it again. But at the same time, I do for Trump's sake. I will say with that debate, Trump did better when he kept his mouth shut. The second time when they muted his mic or whatever. So he's got to learn from that. Dude, you did so well when you shut up. But I hope that it's kind of the Biden thing, just because I don't think he'll do well. But if the DNC wants to do well, I think that they've got to realize that, man, this was a bad idea, and we need to figure out a way to not make ourselves look bad of kicking the chair out from under him, just being gone. And so Michelle Obama possibly would be the best bet, or maybe whoever. Somebody else would just be the best bet. And again, the media would just do a cover up of it's been good, but we think this person's better. So again, the media would cover for it. And they just got to make sure that they don't do it in the sense of we screwed up. No, they just got to make sure of it's been good, but something like that. Yeah.
And they'll do, and unfortunately they'll peddle that to people, and some people will believe it.
Oh yeah, there's people that love CNN and everything else, and just watch the mainstream media, of course.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's our thoughts on that. And another thing we want to do research on are, when it comes to young people, how they vote, what their values are. That's something we'll come back to, but we're going to go ahead and end it there. Big thing is you can follow us on social media, and looking forward to getting with you on December the 6th. We're really wanting to live stream that election between Warnock and Walker. So thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Josh.
Nathan.
And hope you have a great evening. Take care.